So it is truly an honor to be here this morning, and thank you again for the Sure staff team inviting me in. And as you've seen in that video, when I talk about the best version of being you, it's not just some cliche thing that I believe in or try to subscribe to. It's actually what happened to me in my life. And at 28 years old, I was told I was going to die from that autoimmune disease you just heard about in the video. And at that time, I realized that my mission, while it was to serve people in the corporate retail world, my mission was to go out and try to help companies and help leaders and help people become the best version of themselves. So I want to make a promise to you this morning. This is a hefty promise. I want the next 60 minutes to radically impact you. I want to drastically change how you look at life. And that's a really big promise. And I don't know if you're excited about that, but I'm definitely excited about that as well. In the next 60 minutes, we're going to talk about four truths that if you can commit to them, will absolutely change everything for you. And I don't stand up here and tell you to commit to these four truths because it's something I just believe in. It's something I personally had to do myself to rewrite my story, to rewrite success, to rewrite a family story, to help many other people, just as you all do in the everyday things that you do to help people be successful as well. So real quick, drop Ignite if you haven't already, and we are going to Ignite 2026, and Sure Staff is going to continue to Ignite throughout the rest of the year. So let's get ready, let's lock in and dive in. Real quick, as we go throughout the time, what I want to invite you to do is if you have questions about mindset, about how to reframe, about anything you hear I talk about, make sure to drop those into the chat. We're going to have a point in time during the middle of the talk today where I'm going to answer some questions live that drop in there. And here's the thing, friends. If you don't have a question, it's totally okay. Not going to be mad at you. Share what speaks to you. Because the more that we share what speaks to us and the more that we hear from our peers, then we know we're locked in together as a team in one unit so we can be successful. So again, drop those questions. If you don't have a question, drop in something that spoke to you. You hear something that hit you hard, put it in that chat so that way you can revisit it. And if you don't have notebook and paper nearby, don't worry. You're going to get a lot of follow-up, and I have a bonus sheet too, extra for you all at the end that I'm going to give away to help you continue to Ignite 2026. So we ready to go? Do we see the hands clapping on the screens? All right, let's dive in. So I often wonder in life, and I often wonder what your life would look like if these things didn't exist. Let's say low energy didn't exist. What would life look like if anxiety didn't exist? What would life look like if lack of confidence didn't exist? What would life look like if confusion didn't exist? And see, here's the reality about this, about being a human, is that oftentimes these things creep into our life day in and day out. And I think you all have felt probably one of those emotions I just talked about before. I definitely know throughout my time working with people, I've felt those as well. But see, here's the thing that I often challenge people to think about. When we talk about becoming the best version of ourselves, we first have to identify what are the things that keep us back from becoming the best version of ourselves. And are we addressing them? Or are we afraid to tackle them? And so just as there are options to not be the best version of us, there is also the opposite to become the best version of us and tackle those aspects as well. And that's what we should work towards. And so I often wonder, what would life look like if these things didn't exist? And oftentimes when I talk to people who might be low confidence, who might not be super engaged with what they're doing in life, or trying to find that purpose, or trying to find something to focus on, we got to paint a different picture. And so then I offer this perspective is, what would life look like if these existed more? And I think life might look better if we were able to tap into more confidence. If we were able to tap into better strategy, if we were able to tap into clarity, if we were able to tap into each other and establish relationship equity. And as I said before, the pieces have always been there for everybody, and what is always available is always available. And just as much as those first screen with the anxiety and the confusion and maybe drainage of energy is available, so is the best version of us. And it just depends on which one we're reaching to. And if you think about companies, and you think about the companies that have done well and have executed and have ignited and considered elite, this category over here, while they don't dismiss that it exists, what they do is they reach for the greater version of themselves. They limit the beliefs and they focus, they strategize, they have a relentless energy to focus on the greatest pieces of them. And so as a company that takes each and every individual to do that, while we have some that may excel and may just blow it up and may just crush it and they just go and go and go, it doesn't help if the majority over here isn't doing that and that energy is low and that confidence is low and it just fades. And so the weight cannot be carried by one. And so the best companies in the world who focus on being elite, that is carried by all. And that's what we're doing today. That's why you're here. That's why you're on this call. That's why you're committed to everything you're doing. And so that weight is distributed evenly across everybody. And we're focused and we're dialed in. And we know there's going to be struggle. And we know there's going to be pain. And we know there's going to be hard times. But guess what? We don't dismiss it, but we focus on a greater reach. You as a company focus on a greater reach. You as the individual focus on a greater reach. But there's a step before that, a big step. And oftentimes people ask this question. So what is it, Dustin? Sounds good. I'll buy into it for just a second. I appreciate the energy. I appreciate the focus. But life's not just about saying things. Life's also about doing things. So the big question that people always ask is, that sounds great, but how do we do this? Well, friends, that's what I'm going to give you this morning. 4 truths that are not easy, but if you commit to them, they'll change your life. Because I watched so many people's lives changed when they committed to these 4 truths. I watched my own family change. I watched my life change. I watched the community in which I serve changed. Because these 4 truths make the difference between those who want to win and those who talk about winning. And a story I heard once by one of my favorite speakers is the majority of people in this world talk about what they never achieve. We have a lot of people with great ideas, but little action. We have a lot of people telling us about how great things are going to be, but when we follow back up with them, nothing's changed. We have a lot of companies who talk about how they're going to revolutionize their industry, how they're going to change the world, but yet never do. But that's not you all. You all are going to change. You already have changed the world. You have already created an impact. And with these 4 truths, as I talk about this morning, is just going to elevate you and allow you to do that even more. And so the first truth that we have to start with is the hardest truth. And the hardest truth is the hardest one to accept. And if you're wondering, well, what is that truth? It's the truth of excuses. Don't believe your excuses. The very first truth to become the best version of you is to not believe those lies we tell ourselves. And I'm going to share a story in just a moment where I'm not telling you just to do this, but it was actually challenged upon me in my career. And it made all the difference for me. And why I'm so passionate about excuses and lack thereof and crushing them and dismissing them is because at one point in our life, we have negotiated for the lesser version of ourselves. Because it was hard, because we felt our past disqualified us, because of something we did, we felt we don't have the courage, or maybe I don't have the confidence because I felt at that in my past. And when you have those narratives go through your mind, you are arguing and negotiating for a lesser version of you. And so when you think about those companies and you think about those individuals we see that are striving, their life's not easy. But they don't believe the excuses. They crush the excuses. And I want to challenge you today, when you think about 2026, there are going to be pressure moments where an excuse is the easy thing to buy out. It's the easy path to go. For you personally, I want you to think about you for a second. And I want you to think about your past. And I want you to think about those excuses that you believe. And I want you to think about what was the outcome. I know for me, there was a point in time in my life where my confidence was low and I was leading people. And so my leaders on this call, I really want you to hear me when I talk about this. I was a young store director. I had 250 people who I was responsible for in my care. And so while I stood here as their leader, I'll be honest, I started to feel low. I started to feel about here, my confidence. And as you can imagine, I want you to picture 250 people standing up around me. And this is where I felt as a leader. And I was young. Some of you are young in your positions. And I was here. And my team was standing up. And my confidence was low. In my past, I allow it to disqualify me. I said, my failures, I shouldn't be leading this team. I shouldn't be doing these projects. Who am I to do all this? Who are you, Dustin? Why should you be in charge of this team? There's other leaders out there way better than you. Why you? Why you? And these excuses weighed me down to what you're looking at. I felt like this. Even though I stood up, I felt like this on the inside. And as I share that, so many people connect because at one point in time, we will doubt ourselves in life. It's a fact, friends. It's not anything we can escape. But one day I had a mentor come to me and he pulled me aside because he saw this. And so my people leaders who are on the call, I want you to realize that sometimes you have to see what you can't see. And you have to listen and hear what is not always visible with your team. And everybody who's listening, I want you to realize this is the same with your peers. You have to see what's not visible. And so my mentor took me aside and he said, Dustin, what's going on? This isn't you. And just so you know, Dustin, you can only put this facade on for so long because eventually your team, those 250 people, are going to be down here with you. And what he said next to me changed everything. That took me from here to here. And he looked me in the eye. And he said, Dustin, I'm going to tell you a hard truth. And it's because I love you that I'm telling you this. Someone out there with a worse story than you is doing more than you. And that hit me like a ton of bricks, friends. It was a reality check. And that's all he said. And that's all he needed to say. And what I heard him and what he was really trying to tell me is that all these excuses that we could come up with in life are always available. They're the easy way out. It's not fair. I doubt it'll work. That's not my responsibility. Because of my past, it's too risky. I didn't have all the information. I don't want to take the risk. I'm not good enough. It's complicated. I'm not ready yet. None of this matters. Why should I give a concern? Who's going to help me? No one's committed. We can rattle off thousands of excuses to not be successful. And that's the easy way out. But the reason we're here this morning and the reason you're on this call is because you are choosing to not believe these lies of excuses. But we have to call them out so we can then address them. And that is the very first step, friends, the very first step. In order to become the best version of you, you have to ignore the excuses you'll believe. They're not there to help you. Comfort zones are okay in some aspects, but we need to expand them. In order to get what you never got, you got to do what you've never done. If you want to tackle something more, you got to do a little more. If you want to achieve something great, you got to work even greater to do that. That's what the best companies do. That's what the best leaders do. And that's what the best teams do. And so we can have all these excuses available to us, and they're right there, and they're so easy to grab. I want you to think about excuses as a present, just sitting on a table saying, come open me. I'm easy. Just take me. We'll do this together. But you'll never get anywhere, friends. And in Napoleon Hill's book, Think and Grow Rich, the one thing he said that I took away from that book that has stood with me for his majority of my life is on the other side of temporary pain, you will find the greatest version of you. If you can survive the temporary, on the other side of that, you will meet a better you. And the impact you'll have will be even greater than what you could have dreamed of. So the first truth for us to become the best version of ourselves, for you all to ignite in 2026 is when those moments are being pressure tested, and when those doubts are creeping in, and when those thoughts are there, you call out the excuses. And you say, I no longer accept this lower, and I'm not negotiating this for a lower version. We're not there yet. That's not us. That's not what we do here at this company. That's not what we do here as leaders. We choose to be different. And so we go back to the question, but how? What my mentor did with me changed everything. And what I'm giving you is we have to reframe the excuse. And this is what I do when I work with the companies, and when I work with leaders, and when I work with teams, is we reframe the problem. And the issue is so many people believe their excuses because they're not able to reframe something different. And so this strategy literally can change your life depending on whatever situation you're in. It doesn't mean that it makes the situation less. It doesn't mean that it justifies what you're going through or dismisses what you're going through, but reframing your mindset will change everything for you. And so when you think about those excuses that are available to you, I don't have the time. We got to reframe that to, how do I get the time? What's taking me away from my time? What's keeping me away from that project? What am I not doing that I should be doing? I don't have the resources. Let's reframe that. What do I need to do to get the resources? What resources, if I were to just act on, could help me be successful? What if one action I took was better than no traction at all? And so if you want to become the best version of yourself, you have to reframe your excuses. You have to turn them into equations to solve. And friends, that's what the elite do. It's not fancy. It's not super, strategic. It's not this new shiny greatest invention. It's consistency, and it's simple. And the one thing that people are not most days is committed and consistent. And if you can become committed to reframing those hard moments in life, to reframe those excuses, if you can become committed to doing that and become consistent in how you attack them, what you achieved has been phenomenal. But I want you to think about what you could achieve more with limiting those excuses and those beliefs. That's the first step, friends, is excuses. We can't believe them. It's the first truth because it's the hardest truth. And when we can learn to dismiss those excuses, when we can crush them, when we can silence the negativity, then we can do the next step, the next truth, which is to realize that the mission you're on is bigger than you. Now, I've searched and searched for an example to bring to you today that amplifies that. And I will braggingly say, I think I've done a good job of what you're getting ready to watch and what you're going to see. Is about a family that realized they had every excuse to not do what they were supposed to do. They had every excuse to not be a family. They had every excuse to not change history. But because of one single family member rewrote the history for many, 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 many millions of people. So we're going to play that video now. I want to give you a second to maybe think about your family, your community. I want you to think about those clients you serve. And what if, maybe if you gave up, an impact wouldn't have happened? I know when I watched that video, I have 3 children that are under the age of 5, and I've been blessed with very healthy children. But I thought for just a second, what would I have done if I was Team Hoyt? And sadly, Dick Hoyt passed away 2 years ago. But that video has inspired millions and millions of young kids with disabilities, of families with disabilities to say, we can do it. We can do it. And so I want you to think about that. And the second truth to becoming the greatest version of you as a company, to becoming the best version of itself, is to realize that the mission is always bigger than you, and that you play such an important piece in the mission. And that if you decide to give up, you might be robbing somebody of their future, and you might be robbing somebody of their growth. And more importantly, I want you to think about, what if somebody gave up on you? And when you were counting on them, they didn't show up. And I want you to think about that person who did not give up on you, who said, I know the road's going to be difficult, but I just want to show you some things. I want to listen to you. I want to hear you. I want to know that I can help you. And despite everything the naysayers say, it may try to stop us, it may try to push you away from it, I know you can do this because I believe in you. What if that person in our lives never showed up? What if that mentor never came to me and said, Dustin, someone worse than you is doing more than you? What if he chose to say, Dustin's a lost cause. He can't get it together. I wish the best for him, but it ain't my best that I need to help him with. What if my mentor would have did that? What if one of your mentors never did that? What if you chose to not do that? And so the second truth, when we can learn to crush the excuses, the second truth is to know that everything you're doing, the mission is bigger than you. And what you're serving is much larger. And the problem is we want to see that instant gratification. And so the true definition of success is, can I delay instant gratification long enough to be consistent and committed to create a ripple effect that impacts generations? And the problem is, if you never know what impact you'll have, but you'll never have one if you never choose. And so if you don't make an impact, now's the chance to do that. If you're not sure if you are making an impact, I'm going to show you some things in a couple minutes that should reaffirm you all are making an impact. But you'll never know the impact you have if you never choose to not make an impact. So to become the greatest version of yourself, when the days are hard, when the doubt creeps in, when those excuses start to show up, is to step back and take a moment of pause and realize that the mission you're serving is bigger than you. And you get the cool opportunity to be a part of that mission. You get the great opportunity to help somebody rewrite their family's history. Because one dad said, I'm not going to accept what society told me about my son. I refuse to accept that. In fact, I'm going to reframe this situation, and I'm going to do something different. He then gave permission for hundreds and thousands and now millions more to step into that same example he did. But what if he said, no, I don't think I can create an impact. I don't think I could do this. What if he didn't do that? And I want to share something really important about that story you just watched. As Dick Hoyt started to race with his son, he was many years older than him. And in his interview, he talked about the race events would make him qualify based on his son's age, not his age. His son was considered the active participant. So when he was in his 20s and Dick Hoyt was in his 40s, this 40-year-old had to race at a time that a 20-year-old would be competing at. So if that doesn't ignite you, if that doesn't inspire you, if that doesn't get you fired up to move even more in 2026, I don't know what will, friends. He said, I have an unfair advantage. I'm double my son's age, and I have to compete at a time to qualify for all these Ironmans you saw hanging up. He had to compete at 20 years younger. But he reframed it, and he chose that the mission was bigger than him because he realized that what he was doing wasn't just for him. It was for so many other families that were just like him. So I want you to think about you for a second. I want you to think about your impact. I don't care what position you're in. If you're a people leader, not a people leader, part-time, full-time, salary, we're going to put that away for a second. I want you to think about the impact you can have by you showing up. I want you to think about the impact you can have in 2026 by getting committed and consistent. I want you to think about the impact you can have by believing that the mission is bigger than you. See, friends, you are always making people feel something. And the greatest people we love to be around make us feel something. When you're around that person who has energy and it's infectious, and even though life may suck and they have a positive mindset, you want to be around them more. You crave that. But guess what? They're no different than us. They just choose to believe a different mission. They just choose to limit the excuses. And so you are always making people feel something. And so when you work with your clients, people leaders on this call, when you're leading your teams, when you're in the community doing the amazing events that you do that I see on Facebook and I see on LinkedIn, of being in the community and making a positive impact, never forget you are always making people around you feel something. And if you can continue to believe in the mission, more people will believe in you. That's the greatest separator in life, is a lot of people try to sell you on a mission. They want to say, if you come do this, here's the benefits, here's the great things, here's what's cool about it. And they're trying to sell you products of mission. But when you listen to somebody who believes in what they believe in, that's different. That's a different energy. That's a different mindset. That's a different focus. So I'm going to challenge all of you, when you look at 2026 and what's ahead of you, believe in the mission. I don't need you to sell what you're doing and sell the dream. I need you to get people to believe that, man, when this person talks about SureStaff, when we're locked in, when we're engaged, man, I believe everything about that. I believe they love that company. I believe they're bought in. I believe that they know the hard times are not going to beat them. I believe that they're going to be focused. I believe they're going to take charge. They're going to make a difference. They're going to create an impact just like that father did for his son and so many more families. See, the greatest belief is a belief in yourself. You can try to believe in many other people, and eventually you can't transfer what you don't possess. And so I want you to believe in yourself, and I want you to believe in that mission. And if you think just a couple of minutes ago, what I was talking about is the impact that you all have as a company, well, you are doing that right now. You are serving that mission that is much larger than you. 30 branch offices, 20 on-site locations, 140,000 associates you impacted. What would these numbers be if you never showed up? Strategic acquisitions, one of the top staffing companies to work for in 2025. Give yourselves a round of applause. Flood that chat with claps, fire emojis, whatever. Get fired up about the mission you're serving, because that's what will take you forward in 2026 to be the best version of you, each and every single one of you, and be the best version of the companies. And if you think, okay, these are awesome, but like, what's the individual impact? Well, I was able to find 3 individuals who stepped forward and said that. We have Maria that said the staff is friendly and willing to help me. We have Jason who said, what a great experience working with the branch, and the managers and workers are friendly. And we have Alvaro who said, I need to get a job. This is a place to visit. You all are serving a much greater mission. You are changing lives. And what if that one life that you helped changed the rest of their lineage? And you will never know that ripple effect. But if you continue to show up, you can bet you're going to have a ripple effect. And that's what believing in the mission is. That's what believing that every time we show up and we have a conversation, we are literally helping people change lives. That's the belief I need you to believe in 2026 and continue that. Because people will believe that. Just like I hope all of you believe this energy I have this morning, this is Dustin. When I look at you and I look at your company and I've researched and I've studied and I've seen the impact on social media, I believe in each and every one of you that you are going to do even things greater than what you've already accomplished. I can believe in you, but I need you to believe in you. So in the chat, drop belief. Believe in that mission. Believe in that commitment. Believe in that consistency. Believe that you know, no matter how hard it is, you choose to serve the mission that's bigger than you. That's how you become the best version of yourself. And when the company can adopt that identity, that's when a company steps into the best version of itself. So the first 2 truths that we covered, number 1, we have to crush the excuses. We can't believe those lies we tell ourselves. Those excuses don't exist anymore. Right here, right now, at this time, we're stamping it, and we're saying no longer will we accept excuses nor talk about them. When they pop up, we will reframe them. We're going to get after it. We're going to put the resources towards it. We're going to make sure that we continue to serve the mission. And the second thing is believing that the mission's bigger than you. Those are the first two truths to becoming the best version of you. Those are the first two truths that a company needs to adopt to become the best version of itself. And so we're going to transition real quick into a midpoint Q&A. Again, if you have questions about these mindsets, if you have questions about how can I take this situation and reframe it, drop that in. And if you don't have questions, then just drop in what spoke to your heart this morning. So we're going to transition over here. I'll have the chat pulled up and let's go and see what's dropping in. So we have believe, we have the mission coming in. I love seeing this. No excuses. Fantastic. Everybody's buying in. So what questions do you might have? Does anybody have those? Drop those questions into the chat and we'll just sit here for a minute and that way we can keep moving. I'm fired up. Are you all fired up? It's hard with virtual. I want to feel you and hear but what's the energy? Are you guys still moving? Love it. Awesome. So question came in, how do you handle so many different generational differences? Fantastic question. So one of the things that I'll answer that real quick is when I'm working with different generational gaps in the workforce or different generations, the one thing that I remind people is we all center around communication. And no, this isn't like a communication speech I'm going to give you, but where I'm trying to take you is we all center around communication because communication allows us to build relationship equity. And relationship equity is one of the greatest things you can have. And so when you're working with different generations, the first rule of servant leadership is to know who you're working with and to serve them where they're at. And so when I go into companies, I go to where each generation is and I listen to them. And I take that feedback and we take that data and we sit down and we come to the common core truths. And so when we communicate those truths out or we have those conversations, then we can start to connect people through communication and central focuses. And I'll give you a real quick example. I was working with a private owned company and the experience of the older generations was phenomenal. Most of them were retiring out. And then the younger generation was coming in, the up and comers. But there was just this disconnect. You know, like they couldn't really get onto the same page. And this is just this example of that company. And so one of the things we did is I sat down and said, hey, if you had a magic wand and you would fix the problem, what would you fix? And so I had each group share. And here's what's cool when they talked in the same room is they both were focused on the same problems. It was just different language. It was just different solutions they wanted to propose. So that's how I encourage companies and leaders and team members is there is going to be differences, but can we use communication and relationship equity to find the common ground and anchor to it? And then we build from there through the tough conversations, through what we were talking about earlier. You know, what excuses are we allowing to create the disconnect? So that's my encouragement for generational differences. Find the common ground, anchor to it, and be relentless about creating that synergy there. So phenomenal question. Thank you.
Sure.
All right. Other question. Start the morning fired up. Awesome. I love that. We have so many opportunities here now. My family came from Poland. I will not waste their sacrifices. Beautiful. Wow. Oh, that one hit the heart. Awesome. All right. Any more coming in or are we ready to roll to the last two truths? All right. So we'll go into the last two truths. So we've already talked about excuses. We've already talked about the mission being bigger than ourselves. So we were really focusing on the individual side of success and the individual side of becoming the best version of you. Now we're going to shift the truth to how we as a team succeed, how we as a team lock in, how SureStaff as a company dials in and gets focused. And we go to our third truth. Pressure reveals standards. I can't tell you how many companies I've walked into when the pressure was on and standards were nowhere to be found. Integrity started to slip. Corners were getting cut. Decisions that never should have been made were being made. Conversations that should have been happened, they were not happening. Leaders were checked out and expecting their teams to check in. That's a recipe for disaster. Egos become the ears. The eyes become blind to what's really going on. We both, everyone on this call and myself, we could go through and name those companies we've seen or name those situations we've been in. But if you want to be the greatest version of you, if you want to be the greatest version of this company, pressure reveals standards. And I want to give you that framework because earlier we said, well, Dustin, these are great phrases, but how? Well, number one, it's the language you use when the pressure's on. Language is everything. It's so important with what we tell ourselves. The negative language and the positive language, both of that's there. But it's which one do you choose? Which one do you accept? Which one is going to get you on the other side of temporary pain so you meet the greatest version of you? Pressure reveals those standards. So when we look at under pressure, this is what we say. Do we cut corners or protect quality? Do we communicate or do we go silent? Do we blame systems or do we take ownership? Do we rush people or do we stay human while moving fast? That's the standards. And those are the questions that must be asked when the pressure is on, friends. People leaders, dial into me right now. This is where we got to drive our teams. I know pressure is hard. I live to P&Ls. I live to standards. I live to high expectations for my corporate career. I get it. I know how hard it is and the pressure and the expectations. And you feel like maybe sometimes you're alone and you can't talk about these things with your teams and you're trying to protect them and diffuse. I feel you. Please, I feel you. And same thing for non-people leaders. I've been in that other side too. I feel that. But that's where pressure reveals the standard in which you live to. And I'm not naive to say it's not easy. I'm not naive to dismiss it, but I'm here to challenge you this morning. I'm not here to coddle low expectations. I'm here to ignite something in you that allows you to choose the better version of you. So the language you use when you're under pressure makes all the difference. Ask these questions. Are we taking ownership? Or are we passing blame? Are we stepping in when it's hard? Or are we just stepping out because it's easier? So questions reveal the standards when you answer them under pressure. They're defined by how fast is fast without being careless. Okay, so how firm is firm without being dismissive? How urgent is urgent without losing quality and dignity? So once you ask these questions under pressure, then we have to define what it is we're going to measure to. How are we going to define the success of answering these questions? Defining the question is everything, just as we talked about reframing excuses into equations. It's no different. Pressure reveals standards. Whatever you choose to accept is what you get. So what standard is happening and what standard is going to happen when the pressure's on this year? And this is something I found a long time ago from a peer of mine, and I thought it just spoke volumes to when it comes to standards under pressure. The standards are not what you expect when it's easy. They're what you protect when it's hard. That's standards. That's standards. And it's going to take a moment of courage to coach to a standard. It's not easy. When you have a peer who you're close with and you know they're not being the best version of themselves, and it's not that you don't want to be a friend and you're trying to be maybe sympathetic or they're trying to be empathetic to their situation, and I encourage the empathy, but how do we coach our peers? How do we coach each other for a higher standard when the pressure's on? Well, it goes back to what I just talked about a minute ago. It's relationship equity. When you have equity in something, you want the best for it. That's why we invest in stocks and businesses and whatever personal endeavors you like to invest in. And we want the best for it. That's why we put time, money, and energy into it. But are we putting time into our relationships with our peers, with our leaders to our teams? Are we putting the energy into establishing the best relationship equity possible? Because nothing great was ever achieved alone. Every moment of greatness in history, there was people. There was maybe one person that decided to drive it, but there was people. In fact, Mother Teresa has this beautiful quote, "What I can do, you cannot, and what you can do, I cannot. But together we can do great things." And I think that speaks to pressure reveals standards. So what's the standards you're asking for this year? What standards are you not willing to negotiate? What standards are you preparing for that when the pressure hits, we don't crack? We don't lose integrity. When the pressure hits, we communicate. We don't go silent. What are those moments? Are you preparing for them? Are we coaching to them? Are we training to them? Are we communicating about them? Are we getting the team set and ready to defeat them so we can become that greater version of us on the other side? And so people who handle pressure sound like this: ownership language. So if you're taking notes, if you have something nearby, your phone, just please do me a favor and write down ownership language on a sticky note, put it on your computer, something. Because the moment that you don't want to take ownership, which we're human, friends, I get it. I'm not perfect. There's moments in life I don't want to take ownership. But the moment you start to not take ownership, I want you to look at this sticky note, your phone, whatever, and I want you to say, what's the ownership language I should be using right now in this moment when things are hard? And so ownership language looks like, I've got this, I will update you by 3. And you commit to that. It looks like, that's on me, here's how we're fixing it. And for my people leaders on the call, having been a people leader myself and having worked under people leaders, the one thing we as leaders do a really bad job of is saying, that was on me. I'm going to own that, but here's how we're going to fix it. Here's where we're going to build this. Here's where we're going to take this. Here's how we're going to pivot. So just a moment of ownership can create the greatest relationship equity with your team, because I've had to do that myself. I've had to tell my team I was wrong. And when I took that ownership language, they had a much greater respect for me because I had a greater respect for them to not try to BS them, to not try to put on a facade that, oh, this wasn't my fault, everything was fine. So relationship equity is built on the trust of ownership language. Here's what it looks like. We missed the mark. Here's what changes moving forward. Every goal a company set, they may achieve the majority, but at some point in time, there's going to be a goal that's missed. And so it's what you do in that moment that matters. The difference is, do we take ownership language or do we take excuse belief? And we excuse away why we couldn't achieve it. Or do we get focused, we get dialed in, we have the hard conversations. We say, hey, we missed it this time, but we're not missing it next time. Here's exactly what we're going to do to fix that. You got to have that belief to get after it. For my leaders on the call, leadership phrases that signal standards and control, accountability and ownership. So all my leaders that are listening, when you go to lead your people and you work on these projects or whatever task it is, you got to have ownership saying, I own this. And that this is knowing that you have to set the vision or have the tough conversations or create a destination to help your team achieve and get to where they need to go. That's ownership language. I own this. That means I own the level of relationship with my team. I own the fact that I owe it to them to not let them have excuses, because I'm demonstrating I don't have excuses. That's the relationship equity. It looks like we missed it, but we're not going to repeat it. That ownership of a leader. We missed this, but we're not repeating it. It looks like no excuses, just next steps. And I'm telling you, friends, if you can dial into these mindsets, if you can dial into these truths, this makes the difference in life. Not just for the company, but for you personally, because you will find the greater version of you. It exists. It's just hidden behind all of these things we're talking about. So pressure reveals standards. What's the standard going to be revealed when the pressure's on this year? That's our third truth we have to accept. That's the third truth we have to know exists. That's the third truth we have to tackle to become the greater version of ourselves. And we get to our last truth, truth number 4, is you will be remembered for how you treated people. You're going to be remembered for how you made people feel. If you think back earlier, I said you're always making people feel something. Well, what does this ultimately lead to? What is the purpose of this talk? What is it that we're focusing on? What is it that we're really doing? We're talking about these truths, but I need you to lock in with me right now. You choosing to be here and you choosing to do what you do day in and day out is leading to something that you may never see. But ultimately, you are changing the trajectory for people, for industries, for lives, for families. And so you will always be remembered by how you treated people. That's the fourth truth to the greatest version of you. That's the fourth truth to the greatest version of companies. Is we need to remember that what is the feeling of the end user? What's the feeling of those we interact with? What's the feeling of our communication? What's the feeling of our strategies? What's the feeling of my team? What's the feeling of being on the end of me as a leader? And if you answer those questions with the truth and the hard truth, then you can start to rework to become the greatest version of you, to become the greatest version of SureStaff. So truth number 4 is I want you to know you were made for this. You're not here today by mistake. You're not dialed into hearing me today by just luck of chance. You made a decision to become the best version of you. You made a decision to lock in. You made a decision to not accept the excuses. You made a decision to know the mission is bigger than you. You made a decision to know that pressure is going to reveal my standards. And I choose, I dictate, I decide what my standards are when pressure is revealed. You made that choice. And ultimately, that is leading you to know that you were made for this moment in the work you're doing, in the impact you're creating in communities, in the impact you're creating in families. That is what ignites you in 2026, is to know that you were made for this moment. And we can never forget these 4. It's these 4 truths, and you connect them together, and you have no excuses. The mission is bigger. Your pressure reveals standards, and you were made for greatness. And in fact, I want to take it one step further and let you all know that what I've told you today and what I've shared with you, these 4 truths, you've already built them into your company, into your culture. And the reason I say that is because during my research, I came across this. And I thought this was beautiful. Does anybody recognize these? Drop in the chat real quick. Does anybody recognize these? Thumbs up, claps. Everything I talked about today, you all have built into the core values of what I went and found on the website and what I've seen and researched. Everything I've talked about has been built in. So you all are doing what it takes to become the greatest version of yourself. You all are, as a company, are committed to not being like everyone else, but instead of trying to rise to the bar, you all are saying, we are the bar. If you want to be great, you want to be phenomenal, you want to achieve something, get to our level. Because we're not coming down to yours. We don't do that here. Our people don't accept lower standards. They don't negotiate for lower expectations. They're willing to do the hard things. They're willing to put in the work. They're willing to get after it. They're willing to have the tough conversations. Because at all costs necessary, ethically, morally, we will succeed. We will be victorious. We will continue to change people's lives with the work we do. That, friends, is how you ignite in 2026. This is how you win. This is how you stay committed. This is how you lock in. This is how you drown the noise. This is how you become the greatest version of you. And everything I shared with you today, it's not easy. I'm not going to lie to you and say that if you choose to do this, you're never going to have a hardship. You're never going to have a battle. In fact, if you choose to do this, you may find the hardest life to live. But if it was easy, as we've heard, everyone would do it. And this is the greatest separator in life, friends. This was the wake-up moment I had, was you became better because you knew me. And not from arrogance, not from ego, but because I chose to be my best version, I wanted to show up for you. And I wanted to give you permission to be the best version of yourself. And so I want you to think about that phrase as you ignite 2026. Is that you became better because you knew us. You became better because you knew us. Because we cared about you. Because we built relationship equity with you. Because when the moment was hard, we were willing to listen to you. Because when the pressure was on, we weren't willing to negotiate lower standards. We were willing to have the tough conversations to find success. We were willing to crush those excuses that are easily available. Friends, this is how you win in life. This is it. These 4 truths, to commit to them, to be consistent, to crush them, to believe in the mission, to have that sticky note that wherever you decide to put it, to know that you believe in ownership language. You believe in ownership language. You don't believe in anything else. You own what you're given. You as a team own what you do. You as a company own the outcomes. And all those stats I shared earlier, I promise you at the end of this year, I cannot wait to research and to look and see every single one of them crushed. Because you decided today on this Friday that we've done some great stuff, but we're going to do something even greater. We're willing to do what most won't so we can get what most don't have. That's the commitment I want to see you in 2026 have. That's how I want to see you ignite 2026. So as we wrap up, I told you I had something for you all at the beginning of this. If you scan this QR code, you're going to be asked about feedback. I provide that feedback to the companies I work with, what individuals would like to see more of, what inspired them. So as you provide that feedback, at the end of it, there's going to be a bonus sheet. And I'll make sure everybody gets this bonus sheet. I'll send it out. But this bonus sheet is actually a framework that you can follow for what we talked about today to do personal development for yourself and with your peers. And at the end of this bonus sheet, I give you 50 phrases of mindsets. I give you 50 different phrases to look at, to start to adopt, to change the habit to become successful. So if you scan that for me, I'm going to go over here and do Q&A. We'll see how we finish up with the questions, and then we'll wrap up, and I'll let you all be on your way. All right, so as we go to the end here, what final questions or what spoke to you the most? We got, I'm fired up. Awesome. I love that. We got bravo. I believe. Yep. I see it. I see it. Good, better, best. Never let it rest until your good gets better and your better gets best. That's a round of applause. Can we do some claps for that one? Who was that? Ryan? Yeah, I love that, Ryan. That was fire. Communication allows us to build relationship equity. Yep. The Bears, I'm a Broncos fan, sorry. So I think we've already got Super Bowl locked in, Gavin, but we can still be friends. Awesome. In order to get what you haven't got, you have to do what you've never done. We can still be friends. Okay, cool. I thought you all accept me. Awesome, awesome, awesome. Well, as we hit our time here, is there any questions before I close us out? Anything? What do you see people finding success with as techniques for reframing challenges? So, beautiful question, Christina. One of the things that you'll find with that bonus sheet, and again, I want to make sure I get that to you all, is the best technique I've found is to make it a question to solve. So when you're facing that challenge, as you said, finding success with techniques, I often say take the challenge. So you got to be able to identify the core problem and make it an equation. And the reason I say that is I have a background in psychology. And the one thing I remember my psychology professor teaching us is that we are taught to solve equations in school. It doesn't mean we're good at it. This guy was not great at math. But we're programmed for 12 years to look at equations in some form or fashion. It's how we're learned. So as adults, when we face challenges in the workplace or we face personal challenges, make it an equation. So I was working with one CEO, and they wanted to increase communication. It's a very common goal. And so what we did is we said, why is communication not being increased? So we reframed the question. And then I had that CEO write everything down about what was stopping communication from happening or what he believed. And so when he had everything wrote down, then we drew an arrow and said, what's the opposite of this? So lack of follow through, arrow, we're going to set timelines. We're going to set commitments. And we went through the list and we finally walked away with an equation to solve the lack of communication. So really great question, Christina. Thank you. We have being remembered for how you treat people when it matters. I think that's my favorite. I don't think people realize how important that is. Awesome. I love that. If we aren't growing, we are diminishing. So good. All right. Well, hey, look, friends, I want to thank you for allowing me to serve you today. And I want you to know that when I give these talks and these messages, I believe in what I'm telling you because, again, I've lived it and I've seen it. And I know each and every one of you are going to walk away today better because that was the promise we committed to ourselves at the beginning of this, is to have our mindset drastically better than when we came. And so I want you to go through 2026 and every person you interact with, every client you talk to, I want you to leave them in a better place when you're done. And if you can continue to do that with these 4 truths in mind, you are going to ignite 2026. Thank you so much. It's been a blessing to serve you, and I wish you all the best year ahead.